Life begins when you find yourself. A simple phrase, yet within it lies one of humanity's greatest challenges. What does it mean to truly find yourself? And why did the great psychologist Carl Jung believe that most of us live behind masks we've forgotten are masks? Today, we journey into the heart of that question, not just as an intellectual exercise, but as an invitation to look deeper into your own life. The Qu'il-en-faut orte bol présent. Look at your life for a moment. Not someone else's, yours. That job you drag yourself to every Monday morning. Is it truly what you chose, or what seemed sensible at the time? That relationship where you carefully monitor what you say. The social media persona you've curated. The political beliefs you defend with such certainty. Think about your daily routine. The 6 a.m. alarm, the same breakfast, the identical commute, the evening wind down. When was the last time you questioned any of it? When did you last ask yourself, if I could design my life from scratch tomorrow, would it look anything like this? Jung discovered something unsettling during his own psychological breakdown. Most of us sleepwalk through existence wearing masks we've forgotten are masks. We build our identities from expectations, praise, criticism, cultural demands, and childhood wounds. We call this collection of adaptations ourself, never realizing we've constructed a comfortable prison that keeps our real self hidden. Think about how you dress, how you speak in different situations, the opinions you express, and those you keep hidden. How much of this is authentically you, and how much is a character you've learned to play so convincingly that you've forgotten it's a performance? This false self, what Jung called the persona, isn't evil. It's necessary for navigating society. The problem begins when you mistake the costume for the actor, when the role consumes the performer, when you no longer remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Have you ever received a simple question that stopped you cold? Something like, what do you really want? Or are you happy? And found yourself unable to answer, not because you're searching for words, but because you've stopped asking yourself these questions long ago. Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of your routine and felt suddenly alien in your own life? That quiet voice whispering, who am I beneath all this? What would I do if I weren't afraid? What do I want when nobody's watching? These aren't signs of crisis. They're your authentic self knocking on the door of your consciousness, asking to be remembered. The most dangerous prison is the one where you've convinced yourself you're free, where the bars are made of comfort, routine, and others' expectations, where the key lies within reach, but you've forgotten it exists. The Berades ACLF. Remember that sketch pad you carried everywhere as a child. The way you'd spend hours lost in your imagination. Remember how you used to sing at the top of your lungs without caring who heard. The way you'd ask questions that made the room go quiet. Think back to the moment someone important told you to be realistic. When your enthusiasm was labeled too much. When your sensitivity was called weakness. When your curiosity was dismissed as disruptive. Can you pinpoint exactly when you started to edit yourself to fit in? These passions and qualities didn't disappear. They were banished to what Jung called the shadow, a psychological warehouse where we store everything deemed unacceptable. The shadow is where your abandoned dreams went, your unprocessed anger, your inappropriate desires, the parts of yourself you learned to hide, even from yourself. The shadow doesn't obediently stay put. It leaks into life in strange ways. Notice how you unconsciously clench your jaw when someone freely expresses what you've repressed. Feel that unexpected envy when a friend pursues their passion. Recognize that recurring dream where you're searching for something you can't identify. Have you ever felt inexplicably triggered by someone who seems too confident, too emotional, too carefree? What if that reaction isn't about them at all, but about the parts of yourself you've locked away? The shadow always appears as projection before recognition. What terrifies most about Jung's insight isn't that we have a shadow. It's that genuine wholeness requires reclaiming what we've rejected, not just the negative aspects, but often our most authentic gifts. Your greatest potential may be hiding in what you've denied longest. Look at your life now. the career you pursued instead of your passion, the opinions you express instead of what you truly believe, the personality you've crafted to be acceptable. How much of yourself have you buried alive to become the person you think you should be? The inner civil war. When was the last time you sat in a meeting, heart pounding, knowing exactly what needed to be said, but the words died in your throat? Remember that moment you stood at the crossroads between the safe path and the uncertain one that called to your soul, and you chose safety. That New Year's resolution that lasted exactly 17 days. That relationship you stayed in for 3 years too long. Think about the promises you've made to yourself in the quiet of night, the journal entries, the vision boards, the moment of clarity after reading that life-changing book. And then somehow, 3 weeks later, you're right back where you started, wondering what happened to your conviction. This isn't weakness or lack of willpower. According to Jung, it's war between competing aspects of your psyche. Every choice activates opposition within you. That voice urging you forward meets another demanding you retreat. The self you show the world battles the self hiding in the shadows. Have you felt that moment of paralysis when part of you desperately wants change while another part sabotages every attempt? That's not indecision. That's civil war. Your conscious identity trying to maintain control while disowned parts of yourself fight for recognition. Jung observed that most of us live divided lives, like countries with borders inside ourselves. We identify with being responsible while rejecting spontaneity. We claim to value logic while banishing intuition. We embrace strength while disowning vulnerability. And in this division, we lose our wholeness. And with it, our power. Have you noticed the exhaustion that comes from this inner conflict? The energy it takes to keep parts of yourself locked away. The mental gymnastics required to justify choices that don't align with your deeper knowing. What might be possible if all that energy was channeled in one direction instead of fighting itself? Have you felt this inner division? The rational planner battling the spontaneous dreamer. The people pleaser suffocating the truth teller. The fearful child overriding the courageous adult. This isn't pathology, it's the human condition. But it doesn't have to remain unresolved. The mirror moment. Have you ever been stopped in your tracks by your own reflection? Not the casual glance checking your appearance, but that rare, unguarded moment when you truly see yourself, when the mask slips and you catch a glimpse of someone both familiar and strange. There comes a moment in life when the confrontation with yourself can no longer be avoided. Sometimes it arrives with devastating clarity. The promotion that leaves you empty instead of fulfilled. The relationship that finally ends after years of compromise. The health scare that forces you to question everything. For others, it creeps in through the cracks of ordinary days. That unsettling feeling while watching others live passionately while you merely exist. The 3 a.m. thoughts that whisper, "Is this all there is?" The growing awareness that the life you've carefully constructed doesn't actually fit who you are. What happens when you can no longer outrun the question of who you really are? When achievements, relationships, possessions, all the things you've used to define yourself, suddenly feel like they belong to someone else's story. This moment of truth can arrive through crisis, loss, or simply the quiet desperation of an unlived life. For Jung, it came through what most would call a psychotic break, what he called confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, he recorded visions, hallucinations, and conversations with imaginary figures. His colleagues thought he'd gone mad. Perhaps he had. Think about the moments in your own life when reality cracked open. The dream so vivid it felt more real than waking life. The intuition that saved you from disaster. The synchronicity too perfect to be coincidence. These aren't anomalies. They're glimpses of what Jung discovered. The unconscious speaking when consciousness fails. But what emerged from Jung's darkness wasn't another dry psychological theory. It was a map drawn by someone who'd traveled to the underworld and returned. A path toward wholeness that begins with the courage to face yourself completely, not just the parts you're proud of, but everything you've denied, forgotten, or buried. Have you ever wondered why certain people trigger such strong reactions in you? why some conflicts repeat throughout your life, why you keep finding yourself in similar situations despite your best intentions to change. The mirror moment reveals the truth. What you cannot bear in yourself becomes unbearable in others. It is in this mirror moment that you begin to understand. Knowing your own darkness is the key to dealing with the darkness others carry. When you finally face your own unresolved emotions and inner conflicts, something fundamental shifts in how you navigate the world. The very things that once threatened to break you become the source of your greatest strength. The emotional contagion. Remember that meeting where someone's anger derailed your entire day? That conversation with a friend whose anxiety somehow became your own? That family dinner where one person's mood infected everyone at the table? That doom-scrolling session that left you feeling hopeless about the world? Have you noticed how easily the emotions of others can infiltrate your internal weather system? How a stranger's rudeness can cloud your sunny day? How your partner's stress becomes a knot in your own stomach? How your colleagues panic and hijack your calm? Think about your most reactive relationships. The person whose criticism destroys your confidence. The friend whose drama consistently pulls you under. The family member whose disapproval still stings decades later. What gives these people such power over your emotional state? In daily life, we're constantly swimming in others' emotional currents. These moments can sweep us off our feet, make us question our reality, or leave us fighting invisible battles. One moment we're centered, the next we're defensive, placating, withdrawing, or attacking, often without understanding why. But what if these reactions aren't really about you at all? What if that person's cutting remark reflects their own insecurity? What if their anger stems from pain you know nothing about? What if their judgment of you is really self-judgment projected outward? When we dare to face our own emotional landscape, the jealousy we deny, the rage we suppress, the inadequacy we hide, a transformation occurs. We begin to recognize our emotional triggers not as truth, but as signposts pointing to unhealed parts of ourselves. Have you noticed how differently you react to others' emotions when you're centered versus when you're depleted? How the same behavior that devastates you one day barely registers the next. Your reaction often reveals more about your state than about what's happening around you. Instead of being tossed about by every emotional wind, we can learn to stand firm while still remaining compassionate. Imagine encountering someone's anger, and instead of matching it or collapsing under it, you see the pain beneath it while remaining anchored in your own center. This isn't easy. It requires the courage to pause in that charged moment between trigger and reaction, that precious space where choice exists. It demands the humility to ask, what's being activated in me right now, before responding to what's in front of you. But when we do this work, when we become familiar with our own inner terrain, we develop an emotional immune system. The mirror of self-knowledge reveals a liberating truth. You can only be deeply triggered by what already exists within you, waiting to be acknowledged and healed. The awakening. Have you ever watched a child at play? Fully present, uninhibited, whole, before the world taught them to divide themselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. What would it feel like to recover that wholeness, not by returning to childhood, but by reclaiming all you've abandoned along the way? Jung outlined a path he called individuation, becoming undivided, not self-improvement, but self-recovery, not adding virtues like collecting trophies, but reclaiming what was always yours. Imagine finding the scattered pieces of yourself and bringing them home, one by one. Think about the person you might be if you weren't so careful all the time, if you didn't edit your words, if you expressed your anger cleanly instead of through passive aggression, if you admitted your desires without shame, if you shared your fears without apology. Who might emerge if you drop the exhausting performance of being who you think you should be? The process isn't comfortable or linear. There's no 5-step plan, no certification program for becoming yourself. It demands questioning even your most cherished identities, that reputation you've worked so hard to maintain, the together persona you show the world, the roles you hide behind, the righteousness that keeps your shadow at bay. Remember that colleague who irritates you beyond reason. That public figure whose flaws you can list endlessly. That family member whose choices you judge harshly. What if they're carrying the disowned parts of yourself? What if your strongest judgments are precisely where your shadow hides? Have you ever had a dream so vivid it followed you into waking life? Created something that surprised you with its depth? Found yourself drawn to images or stories that move you inexplicably? These aren't random. They're communications from beyond the border of consciousness, invitations to recover lost pieces of yourself. Through dreams, creativity, reflection, and symbolic thinking, you establish communication with deeper aspects of your psyche. Like learning a forgotten mother tongue, you begin to understand the language of images, emotions, and intuitions that speak from beyond rational thought. Unlike modern self-help promising perpetual happiness, Jung offered something more valuable: wholeness, which includes suffering. The integrated person doesn't escape pain but experiences it differently. Anxiety becomes excitement. Sadness carries wisdom. Even darkness reveals gifts when embraced rather than feared. What if the parts of yourself you've worked hardest to eliminate are precisely what you need to become whole? What if your sensitivity is your strength? Your anger, your boundary. Your desire, your compass. Your doubt, your wisdom. What if nothing human needs to be exiled from your inner kingdom? By accepting what we carry within ourselves, the light and the shadow, the beautiful and the broken, we can finally stand on solid ground. No longer fragmented by internal war, we respond with more calm, understanding, and wisdom to the darkness others carry. Having made peace with our own depths, we fear no one else's. The uncomfortable truth remains. Becoming yourself requires facing everything you've pretended not to be. The reward isn't perfectionism or perpetual bliss. It's authenticity and aloofness. The difference between existing and truly living. Life begins anew when you discover yourself beneath the layers of conditioning. Not the self you've been told to be, but the self you truly are, with all its complexity, contradiction, darkness, and light. This discovery isn't a destination, but a continuous unfolding, a daily commitment to honest self-examination and courageous presence. The path to authenticity demands we confront our shadows, those disowned parts of ourselves we've buried beneath carefully constructed personas. These shadows don't vanish when ignored. They operate silently, directing our choices and reactions from behind the curtain of consciousness. Only by acknowledging these aspects can we integrate them into a more complete, nuanced understanding of who we are. Have you noticed how others' emotions influence you? How quickly you absorb the energy in a room? What might change if you first examined your own feelings and reactions before trying to understand what's happening with others? This emotional sovereignty doesn't mean disconnection. Rather, it allows for more genuine connection, rooted in clarity rather than confusion. The mirror awaits, reflecting not just who you appear to be, but who you are beneath the masks. Each reflection offers an invitation. Will you turn away, or will you stay and witness what emerges? In those quiet moments of unflinching self-observation lies the possibility of transformation. The question isn't whether you'll take this journey. Life will bring it to you through crisis, loss, or the quiet desperation of an unlived life. The question is whether you'll go consciously, with purpose, or be dragged unwillingly when the structures you've built can no longer contain your unlived potential. Each moment presents a choice. Continue sleepwalking through a life dictated by others' expectations, or awaken to the exhilarating responsibility of authentic living. The former offers comfort and familiarity. The latter promises nothing but aloofness, the raw, unfiltered experience of being fully human, fully yourself. The choice, as always, is yours.